Okay, let's bring in Ljilijana Stanic, a partner at McCarthy Tetro's International Trade and Investment Law Group. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Let's get right into this, shall we, if we can. And what do you make of this latest development? I think it's discouraging for a lot of people in some ways, but we know the unpredictability of the U.S. president and what he posts on social media. But what do you make of this latest, what appears to be, again, another fairly large hurdle in trying to get some relief, in particular from sectoral tariffs?
Well, these negotiations have had their ups and downs, certainly over the past few months. The U.S. president is prone to attention-grabbing statements, whether live or on Truth Social, and this is one much in the same vein. So while this can be maybe discouraging for some people, I think it's best to view this as part of the give and take and part, frankly, the trade negotiation saga that we've been entering into. And while it seems that the Ronald Reagan ad that's been aired in the States, the president referenced, may have been the triggering point, or maybe what is being pointed to, it's unlikely that it's the cause of the discussions being called off, as we've had a number of developments this past week. A lot of things are going on. One item is that yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court announced that it would be allowing extended time for oral argument in the cases challenging the application of tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And Mr. Trump referred to that in his post, which may indicate some concern from the U.S. government on that front. And we've also had, in relation to Canada in particular, the auto manufacturers who cut back on Canadian productions. There was an announcement earlier this week that there were emission quotas. The number of vehicles that could be brought in exempt from retaliatory tariffs has been reduced significantly. So there are a number of new wrinkles and new elements in the negotiations, but in many ways, this is just similar to what's been going on. And I'm not sure there's a clear conclusion that can be drawn for the actual status of the talks on sectoral deals.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of the points you bring up, and I think they certainly are well taken about, in particular, the U.S. Supreme Court and extending that. Do you believe that, because I want to follow up on that if I could, that irked Donald Trump enough that he's now found a way out in order to, to put that, him being upset about something else and direct it towards Canada?
It's possible. It's possible that also, watching some late night news, he may have seen the ad on TV. And Ronald Reagan is sort of an important figure. He's probably one of the most popular presidents in the U.S. He still has a number of adherents in the conservative movement in the United States and the Republican Party. So it may be that this is likely to speak to some people. It's hardly an obscure speech, and it's been used domestically previously before, but it may be this renewed access is troubling, or the renewed wider audience that people are having now on it, now that it's been on air. But on the Supreme Court front, that also may be a concern. The government has argued in its submissions, among other things, that it's allowed to do these tariffs, and has the presidential authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. This will be a test of a ruling on the limits of the presidential authority in that manner. But they've also argued that they shouldn't be, in any event, ordered to return these tariffs because it would be a huge cost, and it would be a huge blow of billions of dollars to the U.S. government. So there may be sensitivities on that front, too.
I want to ask you before I let you go, too. Do you see this getting back on track at some point this fall, possibly, and if things cool off a little bit? Or is it really going to now be the possibility that we don't see any more major discussions until we officially reopen the negotiations for CUSMA in particular in the new year in 2026?
It's hard to say, frankly. There have been a few similar times over the summer and earlier this year where we've had similar occasions, and it looked like the negotiations were off and then they came back on. And Mark Carney is now going to Asia for the various summits that are happening there next week. And he's supposed to see Donald Trump at the APEC summit in South Korea. So that may be a way of restarting talks again. Or it may be that the news cycle will move on and the talks will get restarted. It's hard to say, as we don't have a lot of clarity into what stage they are at and where we are. But it's also possible that this may be a pause for now until something else changes. I know that the stock markets, at least, have not been reacting terribly to the news, so it may be an overall view that this is likely to blow over. But as with many things having to do with negotiations with the U.S. on trade right now, it's difficult to say, and priorities shift, as do positions.
Ljilijana Stanic, a partner with McCarthy Tetro's International Trade and Investment Law Group. We appreciate your time. Thanks for this analysis.
Thanks. It's always a pleasure.